Welcome to everyone to Sauce Time Gaming. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video once again. Now today we're going to be ranking the iron sights for every single primary weapon in Warzone. I do have a secondary weapon iron sight video in the making already, so that one will be coming soon if you do stick around. So I hope you enjoyed today's ranking, and we're gonna get right into it. I would appreciate if you do like the video that you click on that like button below. If you do want to see all the regulars for Sauce Time Gaming, your subscription is truly appreciated. But without further ado, let's get right into the ranking. Alright, so for today's tier list, we are going to be using the Tier Maker website, a very easy, free, and straightforward way to create tier lists like the one you're looking at right now. And it was very intuitive to use the website. They have a tutorial as well for those that struggle with it. I don't get paid for this, but I appreciate the fact that I was able to use this for free and bring this content to you. So let's get right into the categories. I have divided this into 4 options: long range and below viable, mid range and below viable, close range viable, and just straight out not viable at all. And we'll get into the details of why I think these as we position each weapon. So let's get right into the first one, the Krig 6. Now the Krig 6 iron sights, I would say, and based on the recoil changes that were done where they really increased that vertical kick, I would say that the Krig 6 iron sights fall from a mid-range viable to a close range viable. I think mid-range you're going to struggle a little too much currently with its recoil pattern, but close range you might be able to make it happen. I don't think it's, a completely not viable iron sight, but definitely close range. Mid-range you'll struggle a little bit more in my opinion. Next one up is the Modern Warfare M4A1. Now, you will see that some weapons have different iron sights, and this is based on blueprints or barrels that you could be using on the weapon. I won't go into the specifics of how to get each iron sight, but if you've spent enough time in the store or maybe just observing weapons or looking at them in the weapon builder, I'm forgetting the name for this, but you can notice that the iron sights change based on a lot of different factors. However, on the left side, you will be seeing the Modern Warfare M4A1's original iron sight. In the middle, you will see an option that you can get with a blueprint where you get a bigger circle and you have a way clearer target to look at, which I do like those a lot. And then on the right, you have the sort of infamous M16 blueprint where you would be able to see a reduced visible recoil on the weapon, which a lot of people had a debate on it, that it reduced the recoil overall, but Jay God sort of debunks that, and he said that it was just visible, which essentially it was, but it does help at the end of the day to control recoil when you're just not having to struggle that much visibly. So I would say that the Modern Warfare M4A1 is a long range and below viable weapon, because you can use this anywhere out to 100 meters and below, maybe even a little bit more, and I think people that love the M4A1 will agree with me on this one. So next up is the EBR-14. Now the EBR-14 has, at least that I could find, these 2 different iron sights, and I would say that the EBR-14, because of the way the weapon works, it is a semi-auto. I'm not familiar with the trigger cap for it. I don't think you'll be using this to hit any target at mid-range or above, so it's definitely not going to fall in that category. I'm not sure if I should leave that in close range. I would say that the EBR is just not viable with its iron sights, and I have no regrets for that. Someone had to take the first spot, so the EBR-14 is definitely there in my opinion. So next up is the QBZ-83. Now the iron sights before the weapon change, where the weird kick on the QBZ was affecting people from using it. Now that it was changed, I haven't used the iron sights on this weapon. However, I think I can say with confidence that mid-range this weapon is likely very easy to stay on target with. And yeah, I think the iron sights are rather clean and mid-range is a good spot for the QBZ 83. So next one up is the GROZA, the bullpup. Now, similar to the MP5, when you remove the stock from it, you get a lot of the weapon in front of you. However, the iron sight itself is similar to the GRAV, and it's not too obstructive. And I would say that the GROZA would likely be not easy to control at a mid range, but it shouldn't be that difficult. I don't feel like it should be in the mid range category because no one uses the GROZA mid range with the iron sight. So I think close range viable is a good place to leave the GROZA at. If you disagree with any of these, let me know in the comment section below. But in my opinion, I think this is a good place for the GROZA. So next up is the C58. Now the C58 has, in my opinion, rather clear iron sights. However, because of the wobble that the weapon has, or the weapon sway, I think that it makes it a little bit harder to stay on target. And because of its recoil, it's also very easy to just miss your target, even if you're in a close range battle. So I'm going to say the C58 is close range viable. I think mid-range, because of the recoil that it has, the fact that it kicks a little too aggressively for most people, I would say that a close range variable is fine. You would likely want to run a sight if you want to do anything further, in my opinion. So the Stoner 63 is up next, and the Stoner, as you will see for many of the LMGs, is the problem is the amount of gas that you get when you shoot the weapon, because it is shooting higher caliber bullets, and that causes, based on the detail they've added to the game, it causes way more gas to be expelled kind of in front of your face as you shoot the weapon. So the iron sights are not necessarily the worst, but because of how the weapon gas is released, I think it's not long range viable. I think mid range is a good place to set it at. If you have a higher FOV, I think you'll even enjoy it way more than people on console or people just using a lower FOV. But I think mid range is a good place to have the Stoner. It was floor loot for a while in Warzone, and I don't recall if it's still there, but I think a lot of people noticed that you were able to hit your shots at a mid range a little more consistent than others. So next one up is the RPD. Now, some people's favorite now, based on the fact that it is ground loot in Rebirth. The iron sights are not necessarily the best, I want to say. However, if you do set up your RPD for movement and you use it for close range engagement, it is a ton of fun. If you haven't set up your RPD as a close range option and used it in Rebirth, you just haven't had enough fun in that game mode. I tried it out not too long ago and I had a blast with it. I think it is mid-range viable, however, because I think you do take on 80-meter gunfights with an RPD with its iron sights and still stay on target. So I think it's very easy to control, and the recoil pattern is straight up anyway. So I think all these factors come together to make the RPD a mid-range viable with the iron sights alone. So let's get into the M60. The M60's iron sights, in my opinion, are terrible. The kick of the weapon is terrible, and the fact that there is a ton of gases that come out of it because it's an LMG is also terrible. The M60 for me is just not viable at all. And if you disagree with that, you can leave it in the comment section down below. But not many people have love for the M60. Trust me, I've tried this weapon out. It is unfortunate that they completely destroyed its recoil pattern, because it had a very unique pattern where it would kick up for 5 bullets and then just kick side to side. Like, it would literally kick maybe like 4 or 5 bullets to the left, then it will go back to the right, then back to the left. But now it's just a crazy zigzag that goes up to the left and then to the right, something like that. It's just not viable if you're just going to run the iron sights on it. Try it with the 3X and you're still going to have a tough time. So yeah, I don't think the iron sights will do you any better. So let's get into the next one, the FFAR 83. Now the FFAR 83, you can see the original iron sights on the left, and then you see the blueprint iron sights on the right, which you can get from the Vulture blueprint that you got from Season 5's Battle Pass. And it's just slightly different, nothing too extravagant there. However, I have used this as a sniper support and it was a ton of fun. You can stay on target rather well. I don't recall using this for many mid-range fights. I think close range is kind of where you would want it to shine with its iron sights. You could probably get away with some mid-range fights, but based on my experience, I'm just going to leave it at the close range viable section. So now let's look at the Type 63. The Type 63 is, during its time, it was used as an SMG, similar to how the DMR can still be used now based on the damage profile they have on the tactical rifles. I had to place a sight on the Type 63 to be able to use it as an SMG anyway, because the iron sights are just too terrible, at least in my opinion. So I'm gonna say the Type 63's iron sights are just not viable for anything. So yeah, I'm leaving that there. No remorse. Now, next one up is the DMR 14. Now the DMR has iron sights similar to the Stoner. However, I don't think you can get away with a mid-range fight with a DMR anytime soon. So I do know you can use this for close range. It is rather difficult to stay on target close range, but I think you can get away with it. I feel close range viable is the place where it should be. Next one up is the Carve 2. Now the Carve 2's iron sights I actually like, and I actually like iron sights overall. That's the reason why I'm doing this list, or thought about this list in the first place. But the Carve 2's iron sights I like a lot. I've tried to challenge people at mid-range with it, however, and because it's a 3-round burst, it's just not a fun time. I've used it for close range engagements. It's a little bit better there. I think I wouldn't call it not viable, so I think the Carve 2 stands at a close range viable. Yeah, I think that's a good place for it. Next up is the Kilo 141, the fan favorite until it got nerfed, although a lot of people still use it. But the Kilo 141 for me is a long range viable option. This was my fully loaded Ghost class before I took love to the GRAV. So the Kilo 141 was definitely a weapon I enjoyed using for long range engagements in final circles or close to final circles. So definitely going to stand at the long range and the low viable. So next one up is the FAL, or the FAL. Now the FAL's iron sights are not necessarily bad, however, we want to take into consideration how the weapon functions and what recoil pattern it has. The FAL is semi-automatic. Even so, with a 3-round burst, it's a very heavy vertical kick that it has. I think the FAL is close range viable. People would use it for that, nothing else. I don't think you'd be challenging people mid-range with an FAL. If you are that type of person, leave it in the comment section down below. But in my opinion, close range viable is fine. Next one up, the FR556. Now the iron sights for this one are also iron sights that I personally enjoy. However, we're looking at how the weapon functions. If you're going to use this as a 3-round burst, it's just not viable for anything mid-range and above. Now, for close range, you might get away with it. You can place it on semi-auto. However, you're not going to be challenging mid-range semi-auto gunfights anytime soon. So I think close range viable is a place to put it on. I wouldn't say it's not viable, but it's nothing better than close range. So moving on to the next one, the M13. Now the M13 was actually the very first weapon I ran iron sights for at all ranges. I loved the iron sights on the M13, and I used this for long range all the time at the very beginning of Warzone. Then I kind of took some love to the sights and having the VOK, for example, and trying all the other sights out. But I still love the iron sights, and the M13 is definitely the OG baby on iron sights for me. So long range is where it stands because it deserves it. So let's get into the next one, the SKS. The SKS iron sight is very similar to the Type 63 if we put those side to side there. And I don't think you'll be using this for close range at all. You can use the SKS with a VLK and use it for long range fights, and it's a ton of fun. So if you haven't tried it out, please go ahead and do that. The only problem is that it uses sniper ammo. It is a Modern Warfare weapon. It uses sniper ammo, and that just makes you run out of ammo real quick. But it's a ton of fun nonetheless. I wouldn't use this close range, so I'm just gonna call this not viable, unfortunately, because we're ranking the iron sights here, and they are pretty terrible, in my opinion. So, moving on to the next one, the Modern Warfare AK-47. Now, it is very similar to the Cold War AK-47, almost identical, if anything. However, the recoil is different, the kick is a little bit different, and I think you can place this at a close range viable. Nothing more than that, because the AK-47's iron sights have never been the best anyway, and the Modern Warfare versions are a little less practical than the Cold War version. So yeah, I think close range viable is a good place to have it on. So next one up is our most recent addition, the GRAV. Now the GRAV, you are seeing two iron sights here, and this might not be as relevant for Warzone because the iron sights that you're looking at on the right side are actually the Cold War iron sights. But I thought it was interesting just to see the difference on how Cold War gave you the iron sights for the GRAV, and then Warzone gave you the iron sights, which the iron sights on the left are the one for Warzone. So this is the iron sight for the GRAV, and I think this weapon has very clean iron sights. However, the kick of the weapon itself just doesn't make it too viable. I have tried this for mid-range. You're gonna struggle with it. So if there was a section between mid-range and close range, I would likely put it there. But because it didn't quite reach the mid-range mark, I'm gonna leave it at close range because yeah, you just don't round up numbers up top that way, if you know what I mean. So the GRAV stands at the close range section. So next one up is the FN SCAR. Now, the SCAR has very clean iron sights. I've used it in many different ways with a tac laser. Try to set it up for a quicker aim down sight time by removing the VLK sight as I used on it before. And I think the FN SCAR, if you manage it, if you learn its recoil, its kick, is mid-range viable. I wouldn't go long range because it doesn't quite get there. If there were a section between long range and mid range, I would put it there. But the same case with the GRAV, you know, if you didn't reach 100, I'm not going to round those numbers up for you to 100. I'll round that up to 95. Again, I hope you get what I mean. So the FN SCAR stands at mid range and below. So moving on to the next one, the CR56 AMAX. This one is currently my fully loaded Ghost class, and I am going to place this in the long range viable. The iron sights are extremely clean. If you get used to the recoil, it is still a beam without a VLK sight on it, and I truly enjoy the iron sights. It definitely stands at the long range viable section. So moving on to the next one, the AN94. Terrible iron sights in my opinion. If you've ever tried to use this thing, it just feels weird overall. I would say it's just not viable. I wouldn't use this close range if my life depended on it. I would rather have a pistol and a throwing knife, if I want to put it that way. The AN94's iron sights are just, I hate them, and that's just my opinion. If you disagree with it, that's fine. Leave it in the comment section down below. But it is going to stay on the not viable, unfortunately for me. So, next one up, the AS Val. This is a weapon that you're definitely going to be using for close range because it tends to be a support weapon, but it is a primary at the end of the day. So we are going to have it on this list. Now, I think the AS Val is close range viable. I just can't extend it to the mid range. If there were a section between mid and close, I would put it there. But the same story with the GRAV and the FN Scar. I'm not going to explain it again. But the AS Val stands at a good close range viable uh, foothold right there. So let's move on to the next one, the PKM. The iron sights for the PKM, I think, are clean. Of course, you can see a lot of the weapon when you aim down sight, and when you do shoot. Again, you have the issue that it is a light machine gun, and you have a lot of gases when it is shooting. I would say, however, it is a mid-range viable iron sight because it's clean enough, I want to say. So yeah, I think mid-range is a good place for the PKM, the beloved PKM. Now, moving on to the next, the M91, a forgotten LMG, actually, because not many people really give it much love. It has not that good mobility anyway, so, and very slow reload, so, and it is an LMG, so it doesn't have much going for it, unfortunately. However, I have used its iron sights mid-range. I just wouldn't recommend it there because the iron sights are small and you're having all the drawbacks of the fact that it is a light machine gun. So I want to say you know what, it's just not viable. I wouldn't even use this at close range. It is an LMG, so why would you use it at close range? I just would say not viable on the M91. So yeah, moving on to the next one, the Bruin Mark 9. The Bruin's iron sights are fairly clean, I want to say. Can you use it for mid-range? Yeah, I think mid-range is a good place for it. I wouldn't go long range with it because it does have the drawbacks of being a light machine gun, and its fire rate is a little bit higher than the other light machine guns, so you will be encountering some recoil issues and maybe losing your target. So I think mid-range is fine. I wouldn't go as far as long range. So the Bruin stands where I placed it. Good. Moving on to the next, the Finn LMG. Now, the Finn has, and I've always said it since day one, has very good iron sights. I've always loved them. The problem with it is that it is an LMG, so you want to add a tack laser to increase that aim down sight time. However, the tack laser for the Finn specifically is so thick that when you aim down sight, you lose track of your target just because of how thick that tack laser is. If you've never checked it out, go ahead and do it so you can understand what I'm talking about. But this is definitely a tiebreaker here for the mid-range and close range. If the tack laser weren't that bad, I think I would put it on the mid-range because of the lack of any complicated to control recoil. And although the bounce and the gases are there, I think you could stay on target rather effectively. But the tack laser part, unfortunately, will bring it down to a close range viable. And almost, I think if there were a section between close range and not viable, I would place the Finn there. I'm giving it the credit because I really like those iron sights. But yeah, the tack laser thing is a terrible experience, unfortunately. So moving on to the next one, the RAL MG. The RAL MG has clear iron sights, I want to say. However, the weapon kicks and bounces so much that it's just not viable to run the iron sights on the RAL. It is unfortunate because these are very cool iron sights. I love iron sights, but the weapon performs in a way that it'll just not be practical for you to use. So let's move on to the next one. The Cold War M16, or well, it's the only M16, but I know we talked about the M16 blueprint on the Modern Warfare M4A1. But the Cold War M16 is close range viable, I want to say. The iron sights are not that bad. However, it is a 3-burst, and when we consider a 3-burst weapon, iron sights don't tend to mingle well with a 3-burst weapon. So close range viable at most. I would say it's between close range and not viable. I'm gonna give it the credit just because it doesn't have the worst iron sights out there. So I'll leave it right there. Next one up, the Odin. Now the Odin has two different types of iron sights. The one on the left is the original one, which I think is ugly. I don't think anyone would choose. If you find the right blueprint, you'll get this cleaner line as you're seeing on the right side. I enjoy this iron sight. I've tried it out before. I think it's very fun to use. I wouldn't go as far as mid-range with it because the Odin does bounce way more than other weapons because of the type of ammo it has. So close range viable is definitely the way to go here. It is by no means not viable, so close range is fine. And I think it would stand between mid-range and close, but I won't give the credit to it because you'll just struggle too much with the mid-range engagements. So on to the next one, the MG82. Now the MG82 has, again, the same drawbacks of being an LMG. However, because of its fire rate being so quick and its recoil being rather easy to control, its iron sights, once you get used to it, are not too bad. Which the original iron sights for it are the ones on the left. However, if you utilize the blueprint, which was in the Season 6 Battle Pass, was it? Season 5? Maybe I'm confusing the Battle Pass prizes, but I think you're all familiar with the Battle Pass blueprints. If you use that blueprint and maybe some others that are in the store, you can get the iron sights that are on the left of this image. And these are extremely clean, and these will way enhance your gaming experience with this weapon. And I think you could use this for mid-range if you use that iron sight specifically. If you don't, you'd probably stick to the close range or somewhere in between mid and close. But because those iron sights on the right exist, I want to place this on the mid-range section. And I truly hope you don't mind. I'm not trying to promote the purchasing of the Battle Pass. It's just those iron sights are very clean. You've got to agree with me. So, moving on to the next one. The XM4. The XM4 has pretty good iron sights. Would I extend that to mid-range? I've tried it out. It's not as fun as you might think. So I'll leave it at close range. That's where it even shines in some scenarios. So close range I think is an appropriate place for the XM4. So moving on to the next one, the Cold War AK-47. I would go, if there were a section between mid and close range, I would place it there. I am not going to give it the credit because AK-47s have never had the best iron sights. So it'll have to stick with the close range gang here. It is unfortunate, but it is true. So on to the next one, the Holger 26. Now the Holger has a couple of different iron sights as we're seeing here, the original ones being on the left side, and then based on you finding the right blueprint, you can get the iron sights on the right. Nothing too game breaking here, but it does make the experience different and it helps you have a clearer picture of your target in some scenarios. I would say that the Holger stands at, I feel it's between mid-range and close range. I want to give it the credit for mid because I have used it and I enjoyed, but I'm remembering that this is an LMG. You're still getting the gases, and because of that, I'm gonna leave it on the close range viable. It is unfortunate, but it is true. So let's move on to the next one. The FFAR, very clean iron sights already. The original weapon is on the left side. I am using a blueprint on it, but these are the original iron sights anyway. And then you have this alternate option that came in a battle pass as well, where you have the dragon skull, but you can see um, the reticle. I guess not the reticle, but the iron sights itself is a little bit different from the original. And I just showed this difference here because they are essentially different. I would say that the FFAR is close range viable. Because of the kick of the weapon itself, because of the erratic recoil pattern it has, I would never categorize this mid range viable. So close range it is, which a lot of these weapons have seemed to have fallen into this category. Surprising. So let's continue here. We got a couple more to go. The GRAV 556, the king of iron sights. It is definitely. I'm even gonna put this. I can't. Can I? I'm gonna put this right here. The very first and the best. It's just undoubtedly the best iron sight you can get. Now there are two here, as you are seeing. On the left is the original meta go-to iron sight for the GRAV, and you do have another long barrel, which you get the iron sights that are on the right, but there's no reason for you to use that one when you have such cleanness with the iron sight on the left. But the GRAV 556 definitely long range viable. Actually, even that barrel to the right of it is long range viable because it is pretty clean itself. So moving on here to the SA87. The SA87 has the original iron sights on the left, as you can see it. And then if you choose and find the right blueprint, you can get a little bit different iron sights, which are the ones on the right, which are way cleaner, which is great. And you can actually use this. It is an LMG. However, you can use this for mid-range if you have the proper FOV, I want to say. And the iron sights are just very clean. So I want to place them here with the same premise as the MG82, just because of how clean the iron sight is. Although it does have that rim, it's still just very clean because it's so thin. And I think mid-range viable is a good place for the SA87. Now, reaching here to our second to last is the MG34. Now, the original iron sights for the MG34, which are the ones on the left, are horrible, for sure. But if you find the right blueprint, you will get a cleaner iron sight. The problem is, it is an LMG, so we know the situation with the gas, and the weapon kicks up rather aggressively. So you will lose target in many scenarios, or if someone drop shots on you. So although because of its cleanness, it is mid-range viable, unfortunately, you'll have to limit yourself to a close range, or at least in my opinion, it is limited to the close range because you'll just miss your target in most scenarios. Now, if you are used to the MG82, you might be able to wiggle this up to mid-range, but just based on the amount of times I've used it and I've lost target, I'm gonna leave it at close range viable. Now, last but not least, the Ram 7. Now, the Ram 7, the original iron sights are the ones on the left, as always, and then based on a specific blueprint, you can get a slightly different iron sight like the one you have on the right. Now, the Ram 7, when you get used to it, it is very good. And the iron sights, I don't want to say this as it's confirmed, but when you use the iron sights on the Ram, it feels like your aim assist just pulls a little bit stronger. And I'm not sure why, but this is how it felt when I was using it. The Ram 7 has also been one of my fully loaded ghost classes in the past. I haven't used it recently, so it's not in my rotation, but the Ram 7, in my opinion, is a long range viable iron sight weapon. You can look into this aim assist situation with the Ram 7 iron sight specifically, but in my opinion, it is definitely going on the long range section. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. I truly hope you enjoyed this tier list. I don't think anyone has made a tier list of iron sights, and if they have, it's fine. This is my opinion on which iron sights are the best for which category. Once again, I want to remind you, if you did enjoy today's content, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see all the regulars for Sauce Time Gaming. I am preparing a tier list on iron sights for secondary weapons, so stick around if you want to look at that. If you enjoyed this one, then you'll likely enjoy that one as well. So until next time, I hope I can catch you in the next video, and I want you to always remember, Sauce Time Gaming.